All right, so let's see how we can express the linear equations in different forms. The first, we call it, the first one is called the slope-intercept form. The next one, by the way, we know that this guy right there represents slope, and your B represents the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is the point where your graph, your line, crosses the y-axis. The second form is called point-slope form, and this is what it looks like. And we are familiar with this form, point-slope form. And the last one is called the standard form, and I want you to, standard form, I want you to remember that the value of A, the coefficient that you have next to x, has to be positive. That's very important. Okay, now let me start with my first example. So let's say we have the 2 points, 3, 5, and the second point has coordinates -4, -10. Now they tell you that these 2 points are sitting on the same line. We need to write an equation that represents this line in, let's say, point-slope form. Point-slope form. All right, so what is that point-slope form? Okay, once again, it's y minus y sub 1 equals mx minus x sub 1. What do we need to find in order to write our equation in this form? Well, first of all, we need to find the slope, and also we need these two values, the x and the y values. What do they represent? Well, they represent the coordinates of any point on your line. Well, we have 2 points, and it doesn't really matter which point you're going to use because they both are laying on the same line. So what I usually do, I pick one of these points and I just put, it doesn't matter again which one, you're going to get the same answer. And I just put above my 3x sub 1, and above the 5 I put y sub 1. So that tells me that when it's time for me to plug in the numbers, I'm going to use the 3 and 5. The slope, I don't really have the slope, but I do know the formula. In order to find the slope, remember, rise over run, well, you subtract the y values first, and then, because it's rise over run, so you go up or down first. And then on the bottom, we have x sub 1 minus x sub 2. And don't forget, you have to be consistent. So if you start with y sub 1, then on the bottom, you're supposed to have x sub 1. Let's find the slope now. So, well, we have the 2 points. Doesn't matter which one you want to start with. As I said, be consistent. So -10 minus 5. Now back to this point again. So what's the x value? -4 minus 3. So what do we get? -10 minus 5 is -15. -4 minus 3 is -7. Cancel your negatives and you get 15 over 7. So that's my slope. So that's it. I think I'm ready. The form is y minus, and what do I use for y sub 1? 5, remember? 5 equals, the slope, I just found it, it's 15 over 7 times parentheses x minus, and what do I use for x sub 1? That's the 3. You're done. And again, one more time, I just want to make it clear that you understand that you can always use any point, any given point that is laying on the graph. So we have the 2 points here. They both are sitting on the same line. So whatever you use, you'll get the same answer. When I get the same answer, by the way, this is what I mean. When you distribute and you simplify and you solve for y, in other words, you write your equation in mx plus b slope-intercept form. So it doesn't matter which point you use, the 3, 5 or -4, -10. After you simplify, you're going to get the same equation in the slope-intercept form. That's what I mean. That was example number 1. Now let's talk about the second problem. So let's say we have the 2 points, 3, 4. Let me make it -4. And the second point, 1, negative, let's make them both negative, -2. So again, both points are sitting on the same line. Now we want to write our equation in slope-intercept form. And the slope-intercept form says y equals mx plus b. So you're looking at this form and you ask yourself, what do I need to find? Well, I need to find the slope because I don't have that. And I need to find my b, which shows me where my graph crosses the y-axis. Okay, so I did mention before, I always start with the point slope form first. Always. You don't have to, but I like this strategy. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find the slope first. And it doesn't matter which point you start with. So I'm going to start with this one. So -4 minus -2. And back to this point, 3 minus -1. We get -4 plus 2 over 3 plus 1 equals -2 over 4. And when you simplify, you get -1 over 2. So that is my slope. Now I can use either the first point or second point. Again, it doesn't matter. This time I want to use the second point. I'm going to put x sub 1 and y sub 1. And now I'm ready to write my equation. So it's y minus y sub 1 is -2 equals, the slope is -1/2. I already found it. And x minus, and what's my x sub 1? It's -1. Let's clean it up a little bit. It's y plus 2 equals -1/2 x plus 1. Well, this is your point slope form, but we need to write down our equation in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Well, that's not that hard. So we just need to get rid of the parentheses and simplify this equation and solve it for y. Let's get rid of the denominator here to make it easier for ourselves. You could distribute, but why do you want to deal with a bunch of fractions, right? So what's the common denominator here? It's 2. So you have y over 1, 2 over 1, and -1 over 2. So we're going to multiply this fraction by 2, and we're good here because we already have 2 on the bottom. And now we can ignore the denominators basically because we're going to get 2, 2, 2. We're just going to do 2 times y plus 2 times 2 is 4 equals -1 times 1, -1, and x plus 1. Now you're going to distribute the -1, which is much easier, right? Negative x minus 1, and we're going to get 2y equals, let's subtract 4 from each side, and we get -5. And now we're going to, in order to isolate the y, we're going to divide everything by 2. And this way we get y equals negative x over 2, or negative 1/2 x, which is the same thing, minus 5 over 2. And you got your slope-intercept form. And by the way, once again, the slope is negative 1/2, and your y-intercept, which is b in this case, is negative 5 over 2. I would say let's use maybe one last problem example. And now this time I want to express my equation in standard form, which is ax plus by equals to c. And remember, a has to be greater than 0, and we're not allowed to have any fractions or decimals. That's how the standard form works. So let's say I have the slope of, that's already given, 3 over 4. And we have a point on the graph, and it's negative 3 comma 5. That's all. So in order to write this equation, first we need to come up either with the slope-intercept form or point slope form, it doesn't matter, and then simplify and get that. And again, I really like to use the point slope form, so I'm going to write it down. So what do we need? We need the slope, and do we have it? Yes, we do. It's negative 3/4. Also, I need x sub 1 and y sub 1, and we can just put x1 and y1 above each number, and I guess that's it. So that's the 5, and this one is negative 3. So let's put it all together. So we get y minus, y sub 1 is 5, equals slope is negative 3/4, x minus x sub 1 is negative 3. And now let's simplify it. So we get y minus 5 equals negative 3/4 x plus 3. Now this is a point slope form, but we need a standard form. So I'm going to get rid of my denominators. I'm going to, common denominator is 4, so I'll multiply this by 4, this by 4, and you're good here. So we get 4y minus 20 equals negative 3 x plus 3. 4y minus 20 equals, let's distribute, negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. And we get 4y. I'm going to add 20 to both sides. I get 4y equals negative 3x. Negative 9 plus 20 is positive 11. And now we're going to divide everything by 4 so that we can isolate the y, and we get negative, oh, you know what, actually, well, let me leave it. So this is the slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. But I really actually wanted to express the standard form. So then I'm going to erase this, and I just need to rearrange my equation. So it says 4y, after we added 20 to both sides, we got 4y equals negative 3x plus 11. Now this form says you start with ax. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3x to both sides. So in other words, you're just moving your negative 3x to the left, but when you move from one side to another, you change the sign, so it becomes 3x. I don't want to move 4y anywhere. It has to stay on the left side. Equals, and what do we have left on the right side? The 11. Now we're done. Standard form. What stands for A? A is 3. What's my B in this case? That's 4. And what's my C? And that's 11. And now we are done. Hopefully that makes sense.